Welcome to the Boss Mode Podcast, where we discuss AI and the future of work. Better pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. This is the Boss Mode Podcast. I am here today with my fantastic co-founder, John Lagerling, who I love to sit down together with. This Boss Mode Podcast is an opportunity for us to just have a chat about what's going on in this world and our deeply held beliefs. Today we're joined by a friend of mine, Eric McDaniel, who is a successful entrepreneur in Korea. Your background, if we go all the way back, you at one point as a child lived on the streets of Incheon in Korea, and you were adopted by a family in the United States. And you had siblings. You came back to, and you had a wonderful life growing up in America. I've heard directly from you. You've told me about your journey as an elite athlete, as a baseball player in America. I've seen you hit. It's unbelievable. I've also seen you do Superman push-ups, which is impressive. So yeah, you've clearly thrived growing up in America. And then as a young man, you decided to go back to Korea to discover your roots. And you got back in touch with your family. You eventually even tracked down your siblings in France, brought them to Korea. And you did all of this while you were building businesses. You built one of the most successful nightlife venues in Korea. I still remember House Ming. You've done it 3 times. There were a couple of others that you've done as well. I think I've been to all of them.
Yes, you have.
I don't remember all the names of all of them because maybe I had a few too many drinks. But I'm sure I had a great time at all of them. And I do remember you had great soup.
It was
at
great
House
soup.
Ming.
Yeah. Thai noodle soup. Yeah, the boat noodles. Thank you for that introduction.
In addition to that, you've also got a thriving agency
Yes,
business.
I just started that recently. Yeah, just this year. Absolutely. So thank you for having me, John, David. I appreciate you having me on this podcast today in this bright early morning.
Wow, what a backstory. I thought I had my dose of life's challenges, but hats off to you. That's quite a story. You decided to come to Korea and stay in Korea despite doing well in the US. So I know we have probably a bunch of themes that David wants to talk about, but I have to ask you, do you plan your life in many year chunks or are you living the moment?
When I say in business, you have to plan your years in chunks, absolutely, to forecast and to understand the markets and to really understand the people involved and who you're servicing, especially in your product-based or your service-based business, which I was in. Now, with that said, in 2008, I came back to Korea as a reverse immigrant. I'm a Korean adoptee. So when, of course, I was in the subprime market, then everything was going downhill and I was finished with sports and I was working in the finance sector then. So I was like, okay, it's time to come back to Korea. So that was something I always thought about doing. And that just gave me the motivation to finally come back as a young man and to try to complete my journey. And David hit on it. When I was about 3 years old, I was living on the streets. I was abandoned on the streets. And I've always had that memory, always. And when you think about it your whole entire life, it's very vivid. It's almost like a Polaroid picture when you have a snapshot of it. You know what I mean? Because when you think about the whole life holistically, and when you think about all those memories, you don't think about the 99 good memories that happened. It's always, if you're in a relationship, a business partner, it's always that one conflict that you always remember. You times that by trauma, being hunger, not hungry, actual hunger, right? Actual abandonment. You tend to remember things very vividly. So that gave me motivation my whole entire life, of course, to come back to Korea. So I would have to say I planned it my whole entire life. But making that initiative was definitely an emotional decision, but also something I needed to complete me. So that's when I came back to Korea in 2008. And I started out, of course, teaching English. And that got me here in Korea. No worries. So it got me here in Korea. And to be honest, how I transitioned myself into being an entrepreneur, that was on a whim. That was on a movement. That was on, hey, let's go, especially as a 23-year-old here in Korea. And I found my niche. I found a niche here because me coming here in Korea, I didn't speak any Korean. I was about as McDaniel as you get. You know what I mean? But because of that, I wanted to be more Korean. I wanted to learn culture. I wanted to thrive in Korea. So I just looked intrinsically into me. I was like, oh, what's my problem? I can't speak Korean. Oh, what do I need to do? I need to meet more Koreans. So that's when I started developing like small networking parties back in 2009. So the old school approach, there was no Facebook ads. So I called student councils from all like the Sky schools and I got linked up. So I was like, hey, look, my name is Eric McDaniel. I'm a Korean adoptee here in Seoul. I work for a big corporate English firm. I would love to invite your students to have a social networking gathering where we can do language exchange.
And you didn't fear rejection? You were fearless because it takes some courage to do these things, right? People don't take those actions even if they have the idea or the urge. I'm so curious about you were not afraid of just being
No. That's
rejected.
just how I run things myself. I just really had no fear, especially when you grow up in Kansas City, Missouri. You have to have a thick skin. But not only that, it's when there's problems, there's solutions, right? So when there's solutions, you have to go out and get it. It's just that simple for me. Of course, as a young 23-year-old, I've had my insecurities and everything, but I also know jumping through hoops and also know just going through the process, it's not that scary. And I think that's what I took from being a student athlete is the grit and the grind gets you somewhere. Always. I don't wake up one day and I look at Shohei Ohtani and I read magazines about Babe Ruth and Nolan Ryan, like, oh my God, I can't get there. It's because I've been able to practice perfectly, all right, and have good mentors to show me a good way and show a pathway and see those small attainable results all throughout my whole journey as an athlete. Then, of course, academically, it's the same thing. If you don't study, you're not going to get anywhere. You don't ask the proper questions, you're not going to get anywhere. But that all comes from, can you listen well? Are you listening properly? So then that's exactly my approach was my whole entire life.
It also seems like it's about listening to the right part of yourself because we tell ourselves a lot of stories and we talk ourselves into or out of things very easily. I agree. Listening well is something that I think we're taught when it comes to listening to others. But I think I know in my own experience that I struggle with listening to the right parts of myself, like my gut instinct or whatever metaphor we use to place that emotion that usually guides us in the right place without getting too esoteric. But hey, actually, that's how life works. And this is like when I moved to Japan when I was after high school, I was like barely 18, I think, which is like non-obvious. And I just felt that I just knew that that's just something I wanted to do, to learn the language. And I just wanted to go there. I had
Oh,
visited for
wow.
2 weeks on a scholarship and I felt, okay, I have to go back. And I had 2 hotel night vouchers or a voucher for 2 hotel nights and a suitcase and the name of a school that I wanted to go to learn the language. And my parents let me go. And I was like 17
Oh,
and I
wow.
didn't really know much. But things worked out. And I think it was because I was living 100% authentically with that voice that was just so strong that I couldn't ignore it. And it seems like you have this kind of grand holistic kind of pull, but then, as you said, making the actual decision day by day, that's more of a kind of listening exercise where it's not, oh, in 3 years I'm going to do this. It's more like you have that general sense of what you want to do, and then in the moment you got to listen. But I'm amazed at your story, and because when I came to Japan, I didn't speak any Japanese, but I think your story is even more emotional, right? Because it's you came back, and I think if it doesn't work out, that's going to be much more of a bigger deal for you, right? Because it's part of your identity. I had the privilege of dining at a restaurant called Koan, which is a 2-star restaurant in Denmark, run by a Korean adoptee as well. And he got 2 stars in 10 weeks from 0, Michelin. And it's based on him completely embracing his Korean DNA and heritage, combined with the gifts of growing up in Denmark. And it was one of the best meals I've had. And clearly, this was an individual that had done the work and faced his shadows. He was just a wonderful, sweet person, very powerful and exceptionally skilled, but exceptionally humble as well. So sometimes you meet these people that have gone through things, they've been dealt a hand by life, and they've just rolled with it in ways which I really feel you have as well, which is just absolutely amazing. I sound like I'm wrapping up the
No,
podcast.
not
I'm
at
not.
all.
But I just
John,
want to tell you that
you mean
it just
how
really reminds me of him and how successful he has been and you. And it's like the people who've been dealt the hardest hands somehow turn out the greatest, which is just this mystery of.
You hit the nail on the head.
this
Without
guy.
trials and tribulations, you don't really
Oh no,
journey the process holistically, and you don't realize the spectrum of life. So when you're just giving on one pathway only, let's say you just really just had a good life and you just really under mom and dad's care and you're just really under a good manager and you don't really go above the ceiling. Well, that's all you know. That's all you know is the ceiling above you. And if you don't have ambitions or you don't go through the struggles and pathways, then yeah, you don't really have empathy for the whole situation, for yourself, and of course the journey and the pathway beyond you. Yes,
And for others, yeah, and exactly, it's empathy. And I think it's because life is about our dance with others, and it's hard to have empathy with others if you
100.
haven't struggled yourself. And without an empathy, you can't understand others. If you don't understand others, it's going to be hard to collaborate and work together to make them the best they can be, or at least create an environment where they can be. And so on,
Totally
if you're a
agree with
leader,
you with that.
especially.
Absolutely.
We've said a number of times on this podcast that there can be no beauty without struggle. I think that the struggle makes the beauty possible. Unfortunately, a lot of folks are crushed by the struggle and they become jaded, and this negativity pervades them at a cellular level even. And you mentioned, John, how this Michelin chef, two-star chef in Denmark, he's a sweet person. And without turning this into a homoerotic thing, I would say that the thought has crossed my mind that Eric, you, with all of the challenges that you've expressed to me that you've experienced in your life, that would crush mere mortals. You've retained this almost sweet innocence and still positivity, and you still choose to believe in people around you. Like, you've worked
Correct.
in
Still
the
do.
entertainment industry, which is full of all sorts of characters. And I've also heard some of the stories in the entertainment industry from you and others around you. And yet, you choose to believe in people around you. And does it mean that you get burned? Sometimes, yeah, but it also means that you have opportunities that continue to unfold around you. I think that is one of your
Well, I
superpowers.
appreciate you for understanding that, especially about me staying in a positive mindset. And to talk about positive,
I'm really curious because for people that are as driven and successful as you are, what is your decision process for walking away from giving up? Because this American thing, I've lived in America for a long time now, and I love this kind of American dream and the never give up thing, which is if you just keep at it, if you apply yourself, you can make it, you will make it. But sometimes you should walk away. And sometimes you are in the wrong direction. And there's not a lot of good kind of general culture storytelling around that. I feel it's all about never give up, which is the successful person's mantra. Yes, because it's an after construction. Because yes, they were successful. They're going to say, I never gave up, so I was successful. Yes, but there are 100 people that were not. And I think the reason to give up is often because you're working on the wrong thing. That is not part of who you actually authentically are, what you authentically believe in. In my career too, I've been working on things that I believe in, and things have just unfolded. But I've also worked on things that I don't believe in. I got to do it, whether it's the paycheck or the sense of duty. It doesn't rhyme well, and usually it's better to just try to work on something else. So curious how you make that decision to call it quits. If you ever have.
absolutely. I'm definitely done with the nightlife business because of that situation. But that's all. Well, number one, you have a good framework of understanding the market. Number two, you have to have a good framework of understanding yourself and your capabilities and the team around you. So if you don't have any structure, it's going to all fall down. So now when we go back to the point of when do you give up? I'm not going to give up on my business, because if I'm the leader, I have teammates around me. I have people around me that I've already inspired. So I have to definitely pull through there. Right now, if it's about a project and the people that I'm working with, maybe a future client, then when do I walk away? I have to walk away. For me, it has to be one of the key factors is integrity. Right away for that first meeting, right away for that, maybe several meetings after that, right? I need to know if this person is going to really dog me or rug pull me. You know what I mean? Of course, for that situation, walk away, right? Now, when you walk away from your passion or your idea, that's hard. That's hard because, to be honest, one of my maybe biggest strengths, but also biggest maybe faults would be being loyal, not only to my peers and to my brand and my company, but also when to give up. I hate quitting. It's just something I don't like doing, because when I think quit, I don't think of failure. But like in baseball, I don't want to lose a game and a game of life. But then again, in baseball, there's always the next day to achieve. There's always the next day to segue, right? It's almost with the direction of life, I want to be the driver in my seat, right? But there's also the direction. Many directions go and segue to different places when you have your goals and achieve what you want to do. Let's say if it's a business in cybersecurity or a restaurant or a nightlife establishment that I had, right? So yeah, There's many different partners. You can partner with PR companies, ad agencies, right? When do you segue? So that's your directions.
Yeah, it's the pivot, right? And I think we're in the business of helping startups or people starting startups, sometimes solo, sometimes with a team. And the pivot, like most companies that I've seen that are successful, have done some gradient of pivot. And I think it's how do you stay authentic to your strength, but realize that you were off by a couple of degrees, or as you said, just walk away because that's not the clientele I want to deal with, or that's not a culture that rhymes with what I believe, at least not in the state that it's in currently. And it's hard to boil the ocean, right? Sometimes you got to walk away from even a whole industry or a set of customers that are in a place of life that's not where you want to associate with. So that's interesting. So you went from nightlife to
Oh,
cybersecurity.
no, I was just giving you an
Is that correct?
example. But no, I never went into cybersecurity.
Okay,
No, so
okay. Not
not
yet.
yet.
Rubin says,
Yeah,
as Rick Rubin says, Rick Rubin, which I really like, he says, don't say that you can't do something. Just say you haven't done it yet.
that is true.
I think that's really
That is
cool.
true.
Yeah.
So when I think about what's really important these days is to really give back to society, especially the younger generation, is grit. Like just simple grit. Grit needs to be involved into a backbone of what you're going to do in your whole foundation of life. Grit, perseverance, right? All combining with your passion to succeed.
That connection, combining with your passion to succeed, your passion maybe, period, might be an important connection here, because I think mindless grit, you could become obsessed with something that is highly counterproductive to who you are fundamentally. So the vision you choose to hold, the passion that you choose to cultivate within yourself, and say, hey, this is my life's work right now. And it could be temporal, like maybe that changes, right? We evolve and we unlock new parts of ourselves over time. But to really be honest with ourselves about what is it that I'm passionate about? What is it that is for me? What is it that's true about me? If we can do that, then I believe that grit and perseverance, like these very American qualities of I will persevere, then it's healthy.
It gets easier. It gets easier. It's exercises, right? If you're doing some brutal exercise regime and it's not fun, it's going to feel really hard. But you can burn the same amount of calories doing something that's fun and probably exercise the same muscle groups to some extent, right? So if you try to choose, and it feels fun when it's something you believe in, right? Say again?
I do hesitate to talk about workout regimes with Eric.
Oh yeah, I heard about the Superman push-up, so let's not go there.
Anytime, guys.
what's
John,
that
you're in
latest
Seoul,
one?
so you can join the gym with me anytime.
No, thank you.
No worries.
I'm almost 50, but hey,
no,
it's never too late, right? Yeah.
So speaking
That's
of
not an
the gym,
excuse.
I've been working from the gym. I go to the gym in the morning, so I'm there for 10 hours, 12 hours in a day. But it's because Lifetime Fitness in Boston has a co-working space inside of the gym. It's fantastic. They've got little soundproof booths that you can take meetings or record. I've done a podcast from the gym. It was fantastic. And then I'll spend maybe 10 minutes lifting weights.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I'm not sure the proximity to the weights themselves is sufficient. I think you actually have to do the work.
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that maybe it's like exercise by osmosis or something.
But did you know what they do say? There's proof that if you think about exercising a muscle group, it actually has an effect, like metabolically and on that muscle. So you can actually manifest, which is, and Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say, mind the muscle, right? When you're actually doing the exercise. But apparently if you mind the muscle, even when you're not doing it, it has effect, which is amazing. The power of the mind. And I don't know, Eric, have you heard it? Have you read that article too?
I've heard about that, of course. And then being an athlete, muscle memory does exist. So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And okay, so in sports psychology, you're supposed to imagine yourself, picture yourself going
100%.
across the goal line in front of all your competitors. You're supposed to manifest that. And you could think of it esoterically, or you could just believe that, okay, that's a way to program all of the systems in the body to be aligned or vector aligned. And I think it's the same when you're building a business. Okay, if you have a shared vision and all of those vectors, especially if you have multiple members, are aligned, then it's more likely to go well. So storytelling, I think, is a good way for humans to do that. If you read Sapiens, that book, it talks about how storytelling was a way to get humans to effectively co-create together without having to watch each other all the time because they were running the same script. So I'm curious about how do you plant that script when you're working with teams, and what do you think is the importance of storytelling when you're working with teams? Or is it more that you look at the right character and people that are self-going? I'm really curious about how you choose people, how you work with people, because usually people who've been through a lot are quite amazing at dealing with people specifically. So
Number one, if I'm dealing with executives at a C-suite level giving a pitch, then automatically I know they've been through the ringer. So it's a matter of fact that how can I exude myself to be relatable to them through storytelling, right? Or through a presentation. Then, of course, if I make my deck pretty obvious, me coming over here to Korea, then X, Y, and Z F&B business, then segue to entertainment as a booking agent and this and that, they're going to be like, oh my God. Oh my God, in a way too. They're curious to learn more about what I've done. So that the art of storytelling is the art of curiosity as well, making people curious about what projects you have to offer and what skills you have to offer as well too. So one of the pathways or the strategies that I like to put myself into is shift my perception into perspective. Always. Never put myself into perception. I perceive the things my way. I'm always shifting myself into perception into another person's perspective. And for me to do that, it really helps me understand who I'm talking to as a client, and also maybe that client as a total business, or my team members around me.
For some people that come naturally. For some, they have to really work at it. It's hard for them to put themselves in someone else's shoes. And I agree, whether it's an individual or a group or a company, they come with a set of fears and aspirations that you need to consider from their perspective. And I've been blessed with kind of a sense for what's going on with those energies. I'm curious whether it's something that you've just developed over the years, or if it's something...
To be honest, it comes back on the streets of Incheon. Survival is my greatest asset. I know that. It's my unfortunate blessing. Because I was able to be on the streets and I had nothing and I was hungry, I'm able to observe very well. Then when you grow up and you're poor, of course, and when I was in the orphanage, I watched Disney shows. Oh my God, what would it like to be a character? I get in that character because I want to avoid everything around me. So I would have to say, so when I was younger, when I had complete struggle, complete hunger, like you had to shift your mentality into survival mode, right? So then when I was adopted into the States, of course, my perception into perspective, 100%, right? Land and dropped into the Midwest, right?
It's like a different planet.
Kansas, no
You
less.
must have felt
Everybody
so
was alien
strange.
to me, of course. I couldn't speak English, right? Yeah. So it was
And then you're doing it yourself again because you came back to Korea to experience that being dropped again, not speaking Korean. So it's so interesting. You made the journey twice in a sense. Different, obviously,
absolutely. And
circumstances.
I would say, it's not like I didn't have any fear. I just knew because of my struggles my whole entire life is that what's the
you
worst
can
thing that can happen to me? I know it's not.
While you were talking, Eric,
I know.
it strikes me that you've actually talked about our previous topic. There's a little bit of overlap with our previous topic around visualization, because in these moments of trauma or hardship, it sounds like you were using subconsciously or even unintentionally something that is adjacent at least to a visualization technique. As a child sitting in the orphanage, you watch this Disney program and you put yourself in the shoes of the character and live that life. And presto, you land
City, Missouri.
in Kansas.
Yes.
And then while you're in Kansas, you're growing up, you talked about how for many years your intention was to go to Korea. You lived that and planned that and felt that. You held that inside of you as one of the things that you knew to be, yes, in the future, but it's almost as though inside of you it already existed. And then you landed in Korea. So this living in the future almost is something that you natively have this capability to do. And I believe that ability to live in the future, it's necessary as an entrepreneur, as a founder, to be able to hold that vision of the future that you choose. And yes, live your life today. And there's dissonance because there's two different places, right? But then bridge that gap. And you found a way to do that.
Yeah, David, you talk about this holding a vision often, which I think is really, and we talked about grit as well. And I think the issue now is that a lot of people are just scrolling feeds and feeding off of very short-term dopamine loops, right? And not the long dopamine loops, which can stretch over years. And you get the payoff after years of what is playing golf or baseball, or then you win that game. And same here, holding vision. I want to go to this country. I want to learn this language, or I want to challenge myself. And holding vision, I think, is such a key aspect to this that we don't talk about. We say, oh, set a goal. But for me, setting a goal
Totally
is
agree.
different than holding a vision, because goals can be dry and they can be implied by society. I feel like a lot of goals are inherited from parents who weren't able to achieve those goals themselves. But holding vision is something different, because vision is you see yourself like that in the future. It feels like different than a goal. I know I'm playing with words, but I feel
No,
like
you're
there's
absolutely
something
not. This is, I think this is far from playing with words. You're landing on a really important distinction here. You're right that a lot of the goals, strongly agree that a lot of the goals that we talk about in life, some of them come from the failures of our parents or the shortcomings of our parents. Some of them come from, heck, the rap videos, the gold chains, the bottles of Hennessy, which were in abundance at your nightclubs, Eric. So I think that these goals that we talk about, so many of them come from the wrong place. And when you're able to actually hold vision, create a vision first, because when we talk about holding a vision in our mind, what we're effectively doing is world building inside of our mind. It's like an alternate version of reality in our mind that we're holding. And we can live in that alternate reality. We can't live in it permanently. Otherwise, I'm sure there's a mental disease for that, which I may have been accused of on occasion. But
you have
if we
strong
can bridge the
vision
gap.
abilities.
Yeah.
It's good. It's a good thing, David. It's a good.
Okay, you've
Sometimes
accused me
works
of it a
out.
few times, maybe. Interestingly, watched one of because you're also a podcast host, and I've watched a few of your podcasts, Eric, The Quiet Truth Official. And on your podcast, among your interesting guests, I want to learn from you about how you bring together these guests. And I imagine it's not like some magic technique. It's more about how you've lived your life. But that aside for a moment, K
Yes.
Explorer, an interesting social media creator, comes from
Nigeria.
Africa.
Yes.
He also talked about how he held a vision in his mind of being in Korea and how some of it was cultivated by the content his mother showed him. And I think it's remarkable that an individual from Africa who is exposed to Korean content decides to hold this vision in his mind of being a creator, creating value all the way in Korea, of all places, from Africa. And today he has on Instagram, I didn't check TikTok or YouTube, a quarter
I think
million
altogether
followers on
collectively he
Instagram.
has about 1 million.
That's a 250,000 more than me. Yeah,
That's
250,000 followers
following.
on Instagram and hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah. Sometimes in the millions. Yeah. Yeah.
This is one impressive
Yeah.
individual.
So
There we
he's
go.
amazing. I had to interview him because the whole immigrant story, I definitely have empathy for. Not empathy for. I tip my hat, and it deserves to be told to the world, because it's not about the content that he puts up there. It's about the man behind it that's producing it, the methodology behind it. How did it happen to come to realization? From just one moment to where he watched a K-drama in Nigeria to going into the boot hills in Korea and studying his ass off while teaching himself how to edit and consuming content the whole entire time. Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I love those stories. I've spent a significant amount of time in Silicon Valley, and the most successful founders are first or second generation immigrants typically. And it's almost like this, and built a large part of my career being in Japan, or at least outside of Sweden, but also in the US as an immigrant. And you get to this place where you have nothing to lose in a sense, because you're out of your environment and you become this kind of trickster joker in a sense, because you can create your own reality in a sense, because no one can put you in the hierarchy or in the
Totally agree.
matrix locally. And that freedom, I think, creates something that's just a unique field that you can move in, or you can move out of the field. Yes, I don't have good words for it, but it's really interesting that you talk about the immigrant story. And I haven't seen his content, but now I have to go look. That seems super.
One of his trademarks is he does a
Oh,
subway,
he got on the card.
the mic on the T-Money card, the Korean subway pass card, and he's in there interviewing. And I don't know if it's like the only mic.
Yeah,
but this
he's
is one
one
his
of the
things.
most unique guys.
And
He does.
David, we got to get out on the streets interviewing people about their business ideas.
I just had a conversation with a fascinating individual today. He's the founder of Side Talk New York. I'm far from a Mamdani fan, but
Trump is a
one might
fan,
say
apparently.
that
Trump is a Mamdani fan, so things have
apparently.
changed drastically.
I think that this individual, Side Talk NYC, so it's at Side Talk NYC on Instagram and TikTok. He did this video of Mamdani, and I think that his video of Mamdani might be among the most viewed Mamdani videos.
Oh my God.
So
Yes,
he might
yeah.
be responsible for a substantial amount
Well,
of Mamdani
whoever
popularity.
runs the TikTok algorithm might have gotten Mamdani elected anyways.
That's something that's worth digging into. I don't think there's any danger in talking about the potential dark side of China's influence on the world for
Oh, that's
the three
not
of
what
us.
I meant. Good
Yeah,
times.
so I was actually thinking that an individual who is moving from one country of comfort, because in your case, Eric, you found comfort in America. Of course, through a ton of hardship in America as well, because the immigrant journey in America is
Basically,
not a
middle
small path
America.
for children or adults. There you go.
Endless
I remember
ability,
going
but
to-
also
I gave a
endless
talk in-
hardship. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave a talk in Boise, Idaho, and no, it wasn't Boise, it was Idaho Falls. And I remember after the talk, I came off the stage, and a very kind kind of lady in her mid-30s, she walked over to me, traditionally attractive Midwest blonde lady, walks over to me, zero bad intentions whatsoever. She says to me, "Your English is very good. Where did you," and she's pointing and make it, because there was this disconnect. How does he's not white, but he speaks English. I'm not sure if he understands me, but
Right.
he speaks it. So yeah, I'm sure that
What
growing
happened-
up in that era was challenging.
What happened to
that being
me
said-
what happened to me in Japan when it comes to language? Obviously, I'm not Japanese, right? And in the beginning, when I was really stuttering my Japanese out, I would get a lot of compliments. Oh, Nihongo jouzu desu ne. They'd say, "Oh, your Japanese is so good." And then I came to a point where I would get no more compliments, like zero. And that's when that was after I was really fluent, because people are like, "Yeah, that dude grew up here, obviously, so I'm not going to give him a compliment for what's obvious." So that was an interesting kind of
That is
hump
very
to get
interesting,
over.
huh?
I'm actually going to break. People are going to need to know, John, why it is that you were getting all the compliments. Little known fact, John was a runway model.
Yeah, that's not why I
and
was
I
getting
think that
the
his stunning
compliments. I was
good
getting
looks could have
complimented
been
on
the
my
reason why.
Japanese. I'm going to interrupt you here. It was about me speaking barely legible Japanese, and they were
great.
encouraging me. And the encouragement stopped when you get fluent, which is interesting.
I would
right?
have to say
So
that's a
glad I
very
was able to
Eastern
speak
Asian
on you.
mentality to do, and to where they can really connect with you right away. That's one of the positive aspects of learning language, especially when I came over here to Korea. My Korean was straight ass, right? So it was, oh man, I grew up in the middle of America, so I have a very strong neutral accent, or maybe I can bring it down south a little bit, right? So when I had that twang, southern twang, mixed in with Korean, oh my god, it was nuts. But Koreans were super sweet. They were super sweet with it. They weren't really judgmental on it. Yeah.
One has it.
But
I have to imagine that the language disconnect might actually force the immigrant to spend more time world building inside of their minds. And I also think that the idea of even just thinking about moving from one place to another, moving to an unknown, also requires world building in your mind. And I wonder if this world building could be the reason why immigrants have a very high rate of success as entrepreneurs.
I have to agree with you there. You have to have a strong connection to what aspires inside you, and of course having that positive mindset and also world building in order to make things happen. And the reason I believe it happens in America a lot because the proximity of the immigrant wealth when they first go to America is non-existent. But then again, when they walk in the streets of downtown LA or Chicago or New York, they see the wealth disparity. They don't see the wealth disparity about it not being attainable. They know it can be attainable because the backbone of America was built on immigrants. So it's that attainability that way. And
But that's so interesting, because I think it's really about, do you
Correct.
believe it can happen? And I think we limit ourselves Okay, I'm trying to not go
can't.
too esoteric here, but it's almost like there's this the field of shared subconsciousness, at least locally, or maybe it's all over Earth, right? And it's like when we see someone doing something, all of a sudden a lot of people, it's like world records. Then all of a sudden a lot of people are able to kind of get to that level of performance as athletes where they were not able to do so 100 years ago. And it's almost like we are unlimiting ourselves little by little, and the environment really affects us in that way. And we start believing we can do something, and then we can. But that's the stories we tell ourselves. And I think the American story worked so well because even when it's almost like fiction, people are made to believe it and then becomes truth. And then you see that mobility socially, someone who looks like you, who's done really well, and then you get out of that mindset mold that you cannot. But when you stay in your own society, I felt the same way in Sweden even, which is a very egalitarian kind of good standard of living country, but everything was on rails. Whether you're slightly more academically successful or not, it's okay. Everything was predictable, like a Monopoly game or something. It's okay, if you hit these streets, you're supposed to do this and that. And you got to get out of that mold and kind of force yourself to see that, okay, there's actually no predetermined path. It's interesting because I think those limits we have on ourselves are predominant and they're still there. So the question is not just, it's not just looking back saying, in America, we're able to unshackle ourselves and see that we can have that mobility and be successful. The question in my mind is, what else are we doing to limit ourselves still? Because I'm sure it's there. I'm sure you're still doing it and you're very successful. I'm sure we're still doing it, David. So is AI, is this multiplier that can help us unshackle ourselves from what I think was possible for one person to do? I've had some magical conversations exchanges with Grok, for example, just over the last couple of days, where I was like, this would not have been possible a year ago. And it's really opened my mind to think in different ways, which just wasn't there prior. So something is brewing there where I think maybe through the use of AI, we can unshackle ourselves in terms of what is possible, in terms of speed of thought, and also in terms of what we actually can accomplish as an individual. If we can
I think that through the use of AI, we certainly will achieve a greater collective consciousness, a greater awakening overall. There are these ideals these very idealistic views of even society that tend to be held by very powerful, but folks that have not spent a lot of time creating on their own, kind of socialist views. And then it's also shared by folks who are at the lower end of socioeconomic accomplishment or privilege. And I think that it's just been hard to awaken what is, unfortunately, I'm going to use what's going to be perceived as a derogatory term, the ignorant class. But I think ignorance is something for us to try to awaken to. All have ignorance, right? But I think that it's been hard to deliver education to these two extremes, meaningful education. And I think that AI is unlocking the ability to think together, to co-educate ourselves with AI. And I think that we'll get to a place where we'll realize, and this is me going on a rant against socialism, but we'll get to a place where we realize that it's not going to work. It's a boring outcome. It's a bit of a sad outcome when we get this like a thoroughly mid outcome for everybody. There's no variability. There's no unlocking human potential. It's really unlocking this grand experiment in giving everybody a mid existence, which is probably, one would argue, better than having a ton of people with a very hard existence. But I think there's a healthier way to go about it. If we can truly unlock more people's potential while still giving them the opportunity to achieve aspire to incredible things, then I think we'll have a happier and healthier world. And I think AI is helping us do that. Because, and here's the whole vankaai pitch, I believe that humans are meant to create. And Eric, you create through incredible suffering and hardship. You have always chosen, just as a kid even, as a child, you've chosen to create. And I have been blown away day after day when we used to hang out in Seoul, hearing about your stories that you have chosen to create. And the reason why I wanted to bring you onto this show is both John and I have taken on a new life's work at a time when society is changing, where it's almost on a razor's edge, where it could go in a very dark direction for the next few years. Ultimately, I think we're going to end up in a fantastic place. But for the next few years, and in that next 3 years, I think it could go in a very dark direction with just anarchy and danger and just a lot of hatred and more divisiveness, or it could go in an incredibly productive direction where humans' ability to and proclivity to create, not just create babies, but create, it's amplified. And you embody that. So that is why I wanted to bring you on this
Glad
show.
to be here and thank you again. Absolutely. And I totally agree with basically everything you said there, right? So AI is definitely has the ability to shift us humans, especially what John said, to speed up our capabilities and our brain power and our pathways, moving beyond efficiency almost instantaneously. And that's a superpower that AI can provide for us. Absolutely. But also what I want AI to provide for us is not what the industry, I believe, as a mask is what's doing right now. What I mean is like AI doing like the deep fakes or where you don't have to be there, right? No, we need to use AI, especially with vankaai, is to not only to empower creators, but empower creators, entrepreneurs, people and individuals to be authentic. That's the driving factor. It has to be authentic.
I love it because we've been talking about that so much, the authenticity, and that's the only edge that's left.
100%.
Authenticity. It's the
100%.
only edge that's left. I love that you said that because that's the message. But it's also beautiful because when are people the happiest? When they are creative from their most authentic part of themselves, whether it's a business or music or art or whatever they're doing. That's the answer. And that's the currency now. Because there's so many things you can fake yourself towards creating through AI or whatnot. But people are going to see that the output that is derived from something that comes from an authentic, conscious source, that's going to be the shit. That's going to be what people want to gravitate towards and consume together or enjoy together or even pay for.
I totally agree with you.
That's awesome.
To be honest, I see the shift now already happening, right? So that's why I believe whoever's going to use AI first to be unapologetically authentic, right? Then you're going to win at almost every scale in business or every scale of life, every scale of creation, right? For sure.
And I think being authentic is allowing yourself to be imperfect. And I think we've driven a culture that has a lot of perfectionism. And we have those Instagram filters, and even worse, you have these other filters that modify, that do plastic surgery for you without even having to go under anesthesia because it's all digital. And I think people are fed up with it. And I'm actually seeing more and more people, even on Instagram, stopping using those filters. And that authenticity becomes so much more visceral. And that's the reality that actually is interesting, like the imperfections, allowing ourselves to be imperfect and be empathetic with other people's imperfection. So embracing authenticity, including the imperfections, and then yes, accelerated by AI. I think that's going to be what's going to be a much more enjoyable human experience.
Absolutely. That's what I'm ready to roll on.
I had a conversation today with an individual in Europe who was on the vankaai wait list. And I just started doing
Shout out to Igor. Yeah, shout out to Igor.
Igor. And Igor's story, it was good to connect on a human level with an individual who heard about vankaai, heard about what's possible. He was open with me at the beginning of the call. He said, I'm skeptical. He said, I'm an engineer. I'm skeptical about your claims that you're able to do all of this. And can you really? And so I walked him through it. And as we were walking through it, we were talking about our respective backgrounds as well. And he told me a little bit about his background and how he did as he thought he was supposed to do growing up. He studied
common
hard.
story.
Yeah,
common
exactly,
story.
right?
Hey, I did everything by the book.
Yeah, exactly. He got his computer science degree from a good school. He became an engineer. And the narrative if we exclude the past kind of 12 to 18 months, the narrative for the past decade plus has been, you want to have a good life? Go learn to code. Become a software engineer. Yeah. And what happened? What was it? 6 months ago, a Berkeley comp sci professor, Berkeley's a very good computer science school. Berkeley comp sci professor says, my kids with 4.0 GPAs can't get interviews, right? I think it started to level out a little bit, but still, these young folks were misled, and the consequences of that in the United States have been disastrous for a generation that
because they have all that student debt.
Hundreds of thousands of dollars, in many cases over $500,000 in student debt. The tuition at well over a dozen schools in the United States is hovering at or around that 100K mark. A few of them are over the 100K.
We used to joke about the Starbucks, oh, not we, the interweb people, and I guess us, joke about the Starbucks baristas, right, that have these degrees that are not useful. That's not just about those kind of degrees anymore. It's about like really high spec, super respectful degrees.
How many lawyers and dental hygienists and history professors and comp sci engineers, comp sci grads are driving Ubers today?
Yeah, for how long though? Because how long is Uber going to need drivers? We're getting pretty darn close to that not being the case anymore. I'm talking 2 years.
Maybe less, absolutely. Because the thing is, our economy has, for the past probably 5 years or so, the cost of automation, because even without AI, automation and even just human beings getting better at organizing themselves in these companies has led to a tremendous amount of efficiency, which has been leading to layoffs year after year.
But what's up with those reports that are being put out by, sorry if I misspeak the actual source, but like it was like McKinsey or Deloitte or whatever these companies nowadays that say, oh, the vast majority of companies who've invested in AI haven't seen ROI, they've only seen 2% ROI or something like that. It's almost there's this effort to downplay the impact of AI. I don't know, Eric, if you've seen this too, and if you have a view on it. I'm really curious because I see it as completely revolutionary. It is creating a lot of efficiency, and you got to know how to use the tool though, and it has to be implemented correctly. And yes, there's a hurdle and a hump there. Not sure what's going on there.
I think that, so this has come up in a couple of discussions that I've been having over the past couple of months. And I know the articles that you're referring to, I think there was a Harvard study that said something along the lines of 95% of AI projects in enterprises have failed. And that was a study of over 200 some odd AI projects inside of companies. And I think that this comes down to a couple of things. One, the use of large language models is still very new. And these are like some of the superficial reasons. Another is that the large language models have been improving dramatically. Like Gemini 3 is leaps and bounds better than Anthropic Claude 4.5, right? And Claude has been leaps and bounds better than ChatGPT in a lot of ways. So things have been changing. I think that Grok is a dark horse that's going to overtake a lot of these
Grok
large models very
is
soon.
insane, my friend. It's pretty
Right,
darn
yeah. So I think that those are important factors to consider, that the study's a little bit outdated now because things have changed very quickly. But more fundamentally, the issue is that when you think about large enterprise, who ends up getting tasked with AI implementation? In a lot of companies, it's IT, right? And I know from personal relationships with folks in the Boston, Cambridge area, even large law firms, accounting firms, big consulting firms, they task AI implementation to their IT departments. And that's the wrong department to do it, right? That you need builders.
Should it be like HR or?
Here's what I think JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, has done a fantastic job here. One of the things that he's done really well, in addition to making a whole ton of money, and I like the idea of the way he's putting together his office building in New York, but I digress. What he's done really well, AI implementation is a senior role. Reporting to who? Not IT, reporting to the CEO. AI implementation is something that the CEO and a very senior executive should be tasked with owning, and then everybody in the organization should be thinking about how to implement it. And it should become native to how we think about our businesses. And really, maybe one other factor that I think affects the idea of AI and enterprise failing, somebody posted something that was a little thought-provoking to me, and I disagree on semantics maybe, that AI isn't killing jobs. AI is killing the activities around the jobs. I think that this comes down to like, what is a job?
I'm not sure. Is it killing the bullshit stuff that happens in offices where people are
partly that.
Basically parading that they're working, but actually there's no output and they're confusing motion for progress? Is it killing?
That would be a great interpretation of it. But I think that what was intended is that a lot of the tasks that are being done by somebody who is in a position of responsibility, in a job where you own the job, a lot of those tasks can be automated with AI, but you can still choose to, and John, you've talked about this, take pride in your work. You could choose to take responsibility for your work. as they
Honor
often
back.
do in Japan.
Bring craftsmanship and honor back into work. Wouldn't that be
Yes.
wonderful?
And if you do
And the
that,
only way
then
to
your
do
job
that is
survives.
the only way to do that is to apply yourself. And the only way you're going to apply yourself over years is if you pick something that ideally you're into or you can get into properly, fully, wholeheartedly. So
Exactly. I totally
authenticity,
agree. And I
right?
believe AI has done that. I've seen it in the athletic world. I definitely see it in the business world. It's simple. It helps me write emails. It helps me project PPTs. It helps me organize my thoughts. It helps me make the PPT clean. All right, make my presentations clean. Whenever I'm doing an analysis over a baseball athlete, I put that video into AI, and then it just programs all the points of the position of where his arm release is, to the batting movement, to the speed, to the angle. How can I not love AI? You know what I mean? It makes me. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, you know what to ask. You know what to ask it for, though, and that's the key here. People say, "Oh, it's just AI slop," but no. Like the good output of AI is like when you have someone who have the insight, who have the experience that you do, then magic
Agreed.
happens. And it's almost like AI is like a muse. It's this place you go with your intent, and then it's this
Agreed.
feedback loop. But if you don't have yourself, nothing's going to happen. It's just going to sit there stale. You can't BS your way into a good
Agreed.
output there.
AI can also be a siren.
That is also true. That is also true. Many a token, many a startup founder have spent too many tokens on things that don't work out. But we can blame the model. So there'll be a better model tomorrow, David.
Yeah.
He was looking
Yeah.
directly at me
Yeah.
when he
Yeah.
said that.
I recently interviewed David Park from Ginny AI, who developed Ginny AI literally from his mom's basement and built a $40 million company in 10 years and retired his whole entire family. And all because he created a writing
Wow.
model and he improved it throughout the years. But now AI has sped up so fast that from what I hear and from what I study, every 6, 12, 18 months, it moves that fast now, right? It gets that much better,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, in creating Vanka, we purposefully avoided spending time on building the thing that builds the gizmo. We're all about building the parts that help you plan the gizmo with the business and whatever technology it needs, and then operate it. But we don't want to be in the business of the hardcore kind of, okay, building of the code or the web page or whatever it is that you need to generate, because we also think that UI and UX is going to change dramatically. My AI agent might be talking to the Procter & Gamble AI agent about what kind of razor I want, and it's not going to be like a web interface where you go in and fill out a form as if you're trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
file your taxes. So we really want to focus on the value building around, okay, what are you building here? Plan that, understand it at significant depth, as opposed to, oh, here's like Lovable, I want a website that looks like this or an app that moves like this. So it's really interesting because the models are evolving so quickly that it's almost like you're forced to predict that they're going to be exceptionally good at anything that can be automated. So you have to think outside of that. Okay, what value can I add outside of that reality that's hitting? And it's an incredible challenge, and it's really fun. And I think, David, I think you and I with Vanka, we're in a decent place there. But there are a lot of businesses, if you're just a wrapper for AI alone, and you're just trying to cover for some current deficiencies of AI, the current models is probably going to be rough. Unless your wrapper is really pretty. You could say, I've said this on this podcast before, Michelin star restaurants are just a wrapper for butter and sugar and flour. It's just, you can have the ingredients, but you got to do it well. So it's hard to say which businesses will not survive the next model release. But if a lot of these to-do apps or journaling apps that are just a wrapper for GPTs, I think is rough. And the question will be, David, can we help our founders evaluate? We already have an evaluation model, and without talking about Vanka too much, this podcast, but we have to help see if we can help predict whether these businesses will be resilient to further advancements in AI models.
Yeah, I think that it's absolutely possible to create almost this, as you and I often do, having discussion that even critically evaluates the work that we're doing and assesses what's happening, reassesses on a regular basis as well. I think it's very possible to have that happening as a loop where on an ongoing basis, we continue to evaluate the business and what's happening. Today, the business analysis module inside of Vanka does a very good job of that. But I think that we can, as we will with all the modules inside of Vanka, and even as we add additional modules, we'll need to continue augmenting it. And we've certainly got the team to do it. Heck, our CTO, by the way, a co-founder and CTO, ex-Google brain. This guy helped build
Wow.
AI at Google, and we've got ex-Google engineers that are at the very, very highest end of engineers that have come out of Google. So I think
Yeah, we need to have
we've got the
Satoshi
team for this.
we need to have Satoshi on the podcast at some point. He's one of the more humble people I've met. He's so smart, and he's so humble because he's had his own share of hardship growing up in life, and he's just so patient and smart and so efficient. Anyways, very cool guy. Speaking of authenticity, I think this is, looking through my whole career, this is the first time I've been this. The teams I worked with over the years have always been very good and nice, and there's been a lot of very beautiful and good people. But this is like magical, the way the team has come together this time. And I'm curious, Eric, like, how big are the teams that you work with, or are you increasingly doing the next business on your own now that AI is augmenting it? Where are you at with people versus technology and building your next thing? I'm really curious about that, because who you're surrounded with is, I think, even increasingly important now. The energy, and because everything is accelerated by AI, if you have bad energy, it's not going to
I agree
turn
with
out
you.
well, right?
And I use AI every day now. And what I use it for these days is to help me create brand activation ideas. So for 2026, I'm onboarded to create brand activations for bigger companies. So it's all about being authentic. So that's what I use AI for. So for example, let's say there's a marketing ideation from a company A who wants activated, right? Then it helps me think about the ideas on how I can do that efficiently, strategically, but also customize it to where when I do the event build out, it looks beautiful and it's attractive. It's scientifically attractive to the human eye, right? To where people can
The golden
exactly, right?
ratio.
So
Right.
people can
Yeah.
really engage
Yeah.
into it, but also to where they're engaging into the culture of the activation. So that's where I'm headed to
Yeah.
next.
But yeah, you know what to ask for. That's the thing. You know what to prompt for. You know what you're looking for. It's just that you can get to that point much
100.
faster now. So then the question is like, how much will we be able to delegate to other people when we know what we want and what the output needs to be? It's going to be harder and harder to rationalize giving the task to someone else as opposed to you doing it with AI. So I'm curious where you're at. I guess then there's a physical execution with these activations where we don't have the robots yet to help you set it all up and all of that. And you also need inspiration and input and criticism from team members. How do you see that develop?
I see it developing because I force my people to use it. You know what I mean? So
Okay, but you still intend to have a lot of people
yeah,
working with you then,
absolutely.
I guess.
Because when I
Loaded
do brand
question.
activations,
Yeah.
or simply put, just event production, there's a lot of There's a lot of moving parts there. And what I love about event production and brand activation, because me as a baseball player myself, it's all about having a team for a core goal and to win. And for me, producing the best possible event to where my customers or my client, my big client for bigger companies, and or the people that come in off the street or whoever I invite, they enjoy it. Absolutely, they enjoy the experience.
Yeah.
And Eric's being very humble right now. We won't get into the specific name because he doesn't want to get into that, but he's got like a very high-end roster of clients in the sports.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. And it boils down when you say authenticity, but that
Correct.
translates into trust. Trust in that you will speak truth when, when things are not going well. If there's something to hang up, you'll tell them, you'll solve it. I think in general, trust and authenticity is the currency. That's why you get that account, I'm sure. And that translates into track record and recognition and all of that.
Yeah,
So,
it was
that's
really cool, and that's how I got my foot in the door. But going back onto using AI and especially how I delegate that into my teams, right? Let's break it down. So there's ideation side where I would say produce with, let's say, the other marketing head, right? But then I need to talk to that point and get it streamlined to my marketing and my marketing and design team, right? So it's to where then after that happens, I need to talk to my event builders. Then I need to talk to my general management. Then I need to talk to my event coordinator. Then I need to talk to my project manager, and to create that whole event. So yeah, so that's where
Is it easier to align all of those pods of production or activity because you can be fast in capturing the concept because we can build prototypes much more
right
easily now with
away.
AI. So are you doing
Yes.
prototyping with AI? Yes. I assume that's the case because we see
Mhm.
that in a lot of
Yes,
businesses.
right away. Yeah, absolutely
Yeah.
prototyping. And also when you talk about event scales, right? So what I look, and it's all about how you prompt AI, literally. And I always think about what is the entrepreneurial problem? That's what I think. What is the entrepreneurial problem? And how can I prompt it as much and specific as possible and guide it almost like a spearhead to give me the idea? Yeah.
Yeah, because have you noticed how like even subtle changes in the prompt really changes the output because it's such a multiplier. It's really astonishing. Like even one choice of word, because it's all based on language, which I think is beautiful. That this way we have to express ourselves really gets translated into different
Yes.
output, different outcomes. It's almost magical in a sense. I know it's technology, but it's interesting that how that intent
Well,
translated into words, because that's always been the case when we work with humans too. How you convey the vision, what you say, how you inspire people makes a big difference in the outcome, and it's actually true with LLMs as well.
100%.
it is technology, but it's technology that is rooted in truly the sum of all recorded human knowledge in the public domain or
Not even knowledge, but
publicly
human
accessible.
experience. It's beyond
Yes.
knowledge. Yeah, it's almost a
Well,
salient point beyond knowledge.
and I think maybe it goes deeper than knowledge because in, for example, Shakespeare's writing, there's a connection between the words on paper and the soul and the mind even. There's an indirect connection there. But I do wonder if at some point, moderately soon, when we have Neuralink going directly into the brain, when we have more biosensors like the Aura Ring or the Whoop band, if all of this data starts to be plugged in and we start to feed the large language, the foundational models, train them on this data, can we get even closer to the essence of these truths of humanity?
Imagine a future when we're all on Neuralink and we're basically conversating with each other through telepathy, and it's getting fed into the models. And communication between us is instant, and it's always refreshing the model, in which we have full access to all knowledge.
That's going to be crazy. It's going to happen.
It's going to be a different
Singularity.
species. Yeah, technically it can happen, right? It's like there's no
Yeah.
reason it cannot happen. The question will be, how immediate will it be? Like how many milliseconds? How long to get it up to Starlink and down to where you are at? If you look at the trajectory, like the Moore's law of communication is just, yeah, it's going to be 4 or 5 milliseconds. I don't know what speed the brain. I do know that the baud rate for us talking to each other is exceptionally low. It's probably like 300 bauds or something. Just imagine at the speed of thought. We're going to need AI gatekeepers to keep the wrong people out of your brains, right? So it'll be like, okay, Eric, we're going to sit here, we're going to have a conversation, and my AI agent is going to talk to your agent, set the ground rules for our exchange of thoughts. And it's going to, okay, we're going to sync. We're not going to go on these topics because that's not something I want to share with you right now. And we're only going to talk about
Exactly, because we don't want to end up like Minority Report.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Oh my God, you thought about this? Or, oh, I guess you burnt your pizza yesterday. I don't need to know that. So,
Or the Borg
exactly.
in Star Trek.
Yeah.
even worse, the Borg. Yes.
Elon Musk will be the queen.
Oh my goodness. We're certainly going to have an interesting future. And we might say, oh, but there's going to be regulations, so that's not going to happen. Some people are going to do it. There's going to be maniacs who will do it anyways. And then we'll see what happens. Yeah, not a boring moment, that's for sure. But yeah,
And not a boring conversation.
Yeah, I'm a techno optimist. I think we're going to be good. And I feel like the right people are winning, and the right people are embracing the new technologies and doing well doing so, like yourself, Eric. So that's a good sign.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely got to stay in the positive, especially when you're all about creating and creating businesses, creating AI, but also going back to Disney stories or just movie making. Are you going to be the villain or the hero? You have a choice to make. I think it's very simple. Yeah.
We mentioned Jung and the shared subconscious. I think you have to have a grasp of who your Disney villain is, because everyone has a shadow, right? Own that, integrate it, and harness it for something that's positive. That's the way to go. I think the scariest people are the ones who pretend to be all good and perfect, because they're hiding their imperfections and their shadows from us. And that's way scarier than the people who are openly greedy and imperfect. That's
What
kind of
you
my
just
take on
said
the Disney
brings
story.
to mind Ayn Rand spoke at length about the importance of selfishness. And I think that, yeah, the selfish side of ourselves is something that we have to be honest with ourselves
Yeah, but be
about.
honest about what
Also,
you want, though. Be honest about what you want and let the other person know. And then maybe that can be a symbiosis that's acceptable. But it's when you're hiding your intentions, you're lying, that's when things get really scary. I think, again, you said it, Eric, you said authenticity, and that is it. And that includes, I think, building a society where it's like political correctness, or in business culture, where everyone is like the LinkedIn culture, where everything is amazing. Always, right? Everything is amazing. Wasn't there a song in some Pixar movie or something where people, it's all about everything is so good? Like, no, it's like the anti-Instagram, the anti-LinkedIn. And then I think the people who are actually amazing, but yes, we're still, working on some things, that those are the people that I think will succeed, because they will get trusted.
It requires
you're sharing a
grappling
story
with our
about your
demons.
hardships, right? That's why people gravitate towards you too, I think.
Yeah. It requires grappling. Achieving any greatness, I believe, does require grappling with our demons. And too often we choose to just ignore our demons and lie to ourselves about those demons, the shadow that you describe. And it reminds me as well of something that a former colleague of mine once said to me. We were having a beer out at some random bar in Seoul after a long day of work. And he said to me, David, everybody wants to be the hero of their story. And Eric, you talked about the heroes and the villains in the Disney story. And John, you talk about how important it is to be aware of the shadow, understand it. I think that we can get in a lot of trouble if all we're thinking about is how to be the hero of the story. I think it also is necessary for us to grapple with those demons, look at that shadow in the eye, and understand that, yes, it's a part of us, and engage with it. So it reminds me, thanks to both of you remind me, to look at my own shadow. And I think that's something that I'll spend some time doing this evening in solitary.
Whatever you do in solitary contemplation is none of my business. However, with
Hey, I'm happy to meet you on the other side, though, and see what insights you came to, though. We'll have a check-in tomorrow. And sorry, not to be sarcastic about it, though, because I agree with you. They call it the dark soul of the night, when you actually are facing the stuff that you normally don't want to face. And people spend years avoiding it. They take up smoking or drinking or whatever. A lot of these addictions are about people who don't want to face that.
I totally agree with you. Absolutely. And it's all about facing it right in the mirror, right? Intrinsically within itself, identifying your strengths and weaknesses and what you don't really like about yourself. And you're right, people do mask it. And when I say looking at the shadow, when I go back about you want to be your own hero, or the villain story, when I'm speaking from my perspective, not perception, my perspective is I'm an orphan. And you think about orphan stories, right? Every orphan story, a Joker and Batman, perfect duality. They had a choice to make. They were both orphans. Both their parents died. But they made the choice. One embraced the shadow, right? And another one chose to look at the shadow and said, you know what? I'm not going to let other people have that experience. What I did. And that's how he became Batman, right? So it's all about embracing the shadows for the good of humanity. And I believe that the true hero, not only for yourself, is embracing the hate in order to understand true joy, but also understanding the real hero, the real leader won't allow that to happen to others around them.
Yeah, that's very powerful. And it's really
a lot of wisdom in that.
People who start hating the world and God or whatever because of the hardship, of the suffering that they've been through, or people who choose to take that and turn it into at least put yourself on a different path. It's exceptionally powerful what you just said, and I think it's the essence of the human experience, actually.
And that's why love is hard to do. Yeah. That's why being good is hard to do. Evil is actually easy to do. Making the easiest decision is probably more in the spectrum of that shadow, right? Why is the diamond rare? It's because it's valuable, because it's a rarity. So is love. So is compassion. So is having empathy. So is building a team to understand that leadership. So that's where we need to get to, especially. And I believe AI will help us get there faster.
Guys, this was just a fantastic conversation. I got to say that it's conversations like this that have been sorely missing from the isolated lives we've been living for so long, increasingly isolated. And I know that Eric, John, both of you, I've had the great pleasure of intermittently having conversations like this with each of you on occasion over the years, but now that we're doing this podcast, it's just this culture of podcasting is something that is really awakening something inside of me, and I've derived it's just so much pleasure to be able to sit down together with you guys, have these deeper conversations, and it's something that I'm tremendously grateful to both of you for spending the time together with me to do this, and I hope that this was useful for folks that are watching as well. Eric, John, let's stay in touch, and looking forward to doing this again sometime soon.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this, Eric, and thanks for sharing your story and just being so open with your thoughts. And I think it rhymes with both me and David, and hopefully most of the people that are listening as well. Super worthwhile for us to talk about these things. Again, it's about authenticity, and I think talking this openly about all of these things. People are not lonely because they're not spending time with each other. They're lonely because they're not actually connecting with these truths. I think that's what's been missing. So really cool. Thank you again. And obviously, I'm blown away with all of your insights as well. So
Likewise.
really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on the show and definitely allowing me to give my insights. And I've definitely learned a lot from this conversation as well, especially from David. Look up to both of you.